The pounding started before my brain did. Deep, metallic knocks that did not sound like a neighbor and did not sound like a delivery. It sounded like authority, like someone had decided I did not get to sleep in my own house anymore. I sat bolt upright in bed, heart already sprinting. For a second I did not know what day it was. Then I saw the faint gray light leaking through the blinds and the clock on my nightstand. Just after 6 in the morning. My throat felt thick like I had swallowed cotton. I pulled on a sweatshirt and stepped into the hallway, careful with my footsteps out of habit, like the house might wake up and scold me for existing. The pounding came again, followed by a male voice. "Sheriff's office. Open the door." My hands went cold instantly. I did not rush. I did not hesitate. I moved the way you move when you have learned that panic makes you sloppy, and sloppy becomes a story other people tell about you later. I flipped the porch light on and looked through the peephole. A deputy sheriff stood on my front step in a tan uniform with a black vest, one hand holding a clipboard of papers. Behind him, his patrol car sat at the curb with its lights off like he had decided not to wake the whole street. Then I saw them across the street, half in shadow. My parents stood near the neighbor's mailbox like spectators at a parade. My mother's arms were folded. My father's hands were in his coat pockets. They were not surprised to see a deputy on my porch. They were satisfied. I opened the door with the chain still on. The deputy's face was professionally blank, the expression of a man who had delivered bad news so many times he had stopped letting it touch him. "Ma'am," he said, calm but firm, "are you Tessa Ward?" "Yes," I replied. He glanced down at the papers in his hand. "I'm Deputy Romero with the county sheriff's office. I'm here regarding a writ of possession." The word hit my chest like a shove. "Eviction. This is my house," I said. My voice did not shake because I did not allow it to shake. There has to be a mistake. Deputy Romero did not react. He had heard that sentence 100 times and probably hated what came after it every single time. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm not here to debate ownership. I'm here to execute a court order." I stared at the page in his hand. My name was printed on it in clean black letters, like I was a tenant who had missed rent. Not the person who paid the taxes, replaced the roof shingles, and planted the tree out back with my grandfather when I was 14 years old. That tree was taller than the house now. Its roots went deeper than anything my parents had ever built. My mother called from across the street, loud enough to carry. "You should have done what family asked," my father added, voice flat like a verdict. "Pack. This is happening today." Deputy Romero's eyes flicked toward them, then back to me. He lowered his voice a fraction. "Do you have somewhere you can go?" The question was not kind. It was procedural, but it still made my stomach twist into a knot I could not name. "I am not going anywhere," I said. "Not until you show me what this is." He lifted the top page slightly and angled it so I could read without stepping outside. There it was in bold letters. Writ of possession. A case number underneath, a court seal, a judge's signature I did not recognize. My pulse tried to climb into my throat. I held it down with everything I had. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not ask my parents why because I already knew the answer. They did not need a reason that made sense. They only needed a reason that sounded acceptable to strangers. I pointed to the line near the top. Who filed this? Deputy Romero's gaze followed my finger. He hesitated just long enough to tell me the answer mattered. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "the plaintiff on this case is..." He stopped mid-sentence, looked back at the paperwork, then looked at me again. His face changed. Not shock. Not pity. Recognition. Like someone had just realized the villain was standing in plain sight. He cleared his throat once and spoke the words that changed everything. Filed by Diane Ward and Mark Ward. My parents. My own parents had filed an eviction against me. They did not even pretend to be embarrassed. My mother's chin lifted like she was proud of the line being read out loud. I felt something go still inside me. A clean, cold stillness. Because if the plaintiff was my parents, that meant they had not just threatened me. They had gone into a courthouse and turned themselves into the reasonable side of a story I did not even know was being told. And if there was a writ, it meant they had already gotten a judgment. Without me, without my knowledge, without my voice. I kept my voice level. When was this case filed? Deputy Romero checked the page. Judgment was entered last week. Last week. My mouth went dry. I had been here last week. I had gone to work, come home, watered the plants, slept in this bed. I had not been in court. I had not been served anything. No deputy at my door, no certified mail, no taped notice on my window, nothing. Where was I served? I asked. Deputy Romero looked down again, and this time his pause was heavier. He ran his thumb down a section, scanning. Service address listed as 128 Maple Terrace. I did not answer because my brain was refusing to accept the reality of what I was hearing. Maple Terrace was not my address. It was not any address I had lived at in my adult life. It was the little rental my parents had occupied 15 years ago before they moved up in the world, the place with a cracked driveway and a mailbox that leaned like a tired tooth. A place I had not set foot in since high school. That is not my address, I said calmly. That is not where I live. Deputy Romero's jaw tightened slightly. He did not say I know, he said, it's what's on the return of service. My mother called out again, sweeter now, like she was performing for the deputy. We tried to do this the easy way, Tessa. You forced us. I did not look at her. I looked at Deputy Romero. Can you show me the return of service? He flipped a page back. Careful. Ma'am, I can show you what I have. He angled it so I could read. A line stating service had been completed. A signature. A date. A time. And a description that made my skin go cold. Substitute service accepted by adult female occupant at Maple Terrace. Adult female occupant, Maple Terrace. My parents had used an address they controlled and claimed someone accepted papers on my behalf, someone who was almost certainly my mother. I slowly looked across the street. My mother stared back at me with a calm, practiced face, like she had already rehearsed how this day would go. And in that moment, I understood the real purpose of the eviction. It was not just to humiliate me. It was to rush me, force me to pack, leave, lose control of the house, make me too scattered to fight in time. Because if I did not get a judge to stop this, a deputy sheriff would legally remove me from the home my grandfather left me, the home where I had learned to ride a bike, where I had cried when my grandmother died, where I had sat on the porch with Grandpa Henry and watched thunderstorms roll in, feeling safer than anywhere else in the world. This house was my grandfather's, I said to Deputy Romero. He left it to me. He did not argue. He simply held the papers tighter, like he hated being the delivery system for other people's cruelty. Ma'am, he said, if you believe the court order was obtained improperly, you need to contact the court immediately and file an emergency motion. I can't tell you how to do that. I nodded once. I understand. He glanced back down, then up, and his voice turned even more careful. There's one more thing. This writ authorizes same-day possession. My stomach tightened. Same day. He looked me straight in the eye, professional and not unkind. Without a judge's stay, he said, I have to clear this house by noon. Noon. 6 hours to save everything my grandfather had trusted me to protect. I did not stand there arguing. Arguing would have given my parents what they wanted. A scene. A story. A reason to point and say I was unstable. So I did the only thing that mattered. I built a record. I asked Deputy Romero to hold the paperwork steady while I took clear photos of every page with my phone. The case number, the court seal, the signature line, the service address, the return of service language. Every word that might save me later. Then I stepped back inside, shut the door gently, and slid the deadbolt into place. Through the window, I could still see my parents across the street, watching like they were waiting for me to start throwing boxes onto the lawn. My mother had that same satisfied stillness she used to wear when she thought she had cornered me into obedience. I did not give her the satisfaction of movement. I grabbed my wallet, my keys, my phone, and one small fireproof pouch from the drawer where I kept the boring things that become life or death when other people decide to get creative. My deed copy, my grandfather's probate distribution letter, the property tax statements, the homeowner's policy in my name. Then I called the courthouse clerk's office while standing in my own kitchen. The line rang twice. Civil Division, a woman answered, voice brisk. I have a writ of possession for an eviction, I said calmly. I was never served. I need to know how to request an emergency stay and set aside a default. There was a pause. Keys clicking. The kind of pause that meant she had pulled the case number and was deciding how much mercy the system was willing to offer at 6 a.m. What's the case number? She asked. I read it off the photo on my phone. She typed again, longer this time. Then her voice changed, just slightly. Less scripted. Ma'am, she said, this is an unlawful detainer filed by Mark and Diane Ward. Default judgment entered last week. I was never served, I repeated. The service address listed is Maple Terrace. That is not my address. Another pause. More keys. I see the return, she said carefully. It says substitute service accepted by an adult female occupant. That would be my mother, I said. And my voice stayed even because if I let myself feel the rage, I would lose time. What do I do right now? You need to file an emergency motion to stay enforcement, and a motion to vacate the default. How fast can that be heard? She hesitated. Depends on the judge's calendar. It has to be heard today. The deputy says he has to clear the house by noon. The clerk exhaled quietly, like she did not like what she was about to say but was going to say it anyway. Come to the courthouse as soon as we open. Bring identification, proof of your address. Bring any evidence you were not served, and if you have proof you own the property, bring that too. I do, I said. Good. She paused, then added something that made me grip the phone tighter. And, ma'am, there's something else attached to this case. A deed. My throat tightened. A quitclaim deed. Recorded 2 weeks ago. It says you transferred the property to your parents. The world went silent for exactly 1 heartbeat. I never signed a quitclaim deed. I could hear her breathing on the other end, the careful breath of someone who has seen this before and knows what it means. Then you need to tell that to the judge, she said. Because right now, that deed is the reason they're claiming they own your house. I ended the call. My hand did not shake. My eyes did not water. Because I understood now what my parents had done. They had not just tried to evict me. They had tried to erase me. Forge my name, steal my grandfather's gift, turn 15 years of his trust into paperwork that said I had given it all away. I looked out the window one more time. My mother was still watching, still waiting, still satisfied. She did not know what was coming, but she was about to find out. I never signed a quitclaim deed. The words kept repeating in my head as I stood in my kitchen, phone still warm in my hand. 2 weeks ago, according to the clerk. Someone had recorded a deed transferring my grandfather's house to my parents. A deed with my name on it. A signature that was supposed to be mine. And I had never seen it. Never touched it. Never agreed to give away the only thing that proved someone in my family had ever believed in me. I forced my voice to stay level even though no one was listening. When was this deed recorded? The clerk checked again. 2 weeks ago. Same day the eviction was filed. Same day. My mind raced, but my body stayed still. They had filed the deed and the eviction together. A coordinated attack I never saw coming. While I was going to work, paying my bills, living my quiet life in my grandfather's house, my parents had been building a paper trail designed to erase me from my own property. Ma'am, the clerk said, her voice softer now, less scripted. You need to get here as soon as we open. Bring everything, identification, proof of your address, proof you own the property. And if you have any evidence you were not the one who signed that deed, bring that too. I do, I said, and I meant it. Because I had something they did not know about. I had the original deed from my grandfather's estate. I had the probate distribution letter with my name on it. I had 15 years of property tax statements addressed to me and only me. And I had the truth. I ended the call and checked the time. 6:22 in the morning. Courthouse opened at 8. Noon deadline. Less than 6 hours to save everything. I grabbed my keys and moved toward the back door. I was not going to walk past my parents on my way out. I was not going to give them the confrontation they wanted. I went through the backyard, around the fence, and got into my car without looking at them, without giving them the satisfaction of watching me scramble. In my rearview mirror, I could see my mother on the sidewalk now, phone pressed to her ear. She was not watching me leave. She was coordinating. I did not know who she was calling, but I knew it was not good. People who forge deeds do not stop at one crime. The drive to the courthouse took 23 minutes. 23 minutes of pale morning light and empty streets, and my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. I drove past the street where my grandfather used to live, before he got sick, before the house became mine. I remembered visiting him there as a child, the smell of pipe tobacco and wood polish, the way he would let me help him fix things around the house, even when I was too small to be useful. "You're good with your hands," he would say, like me. I remembered the day he told me about the will, 2 years before he died. We were sitting on his porch, watching the sunset, iced tea sweating in the summer heat. "Your parents came to see me yesterday," he said. "They want me to change my will." I stayed quiet. I did not know what to say. I told them no. "Why are you giving it to me?" I asked. I was not fishing for compliments. I genuinely did not understand. My parents had always acted like they were entitled to everything he owned. He looked at me with tired eyes. "Because you're the only one who never asked for it." He said something else that day, something I did not understand until now. He said, "Keep the papers safe. And don't trust anyone who tells you family doesn't need paperwork." I thought he was being paranoid. He was being prophetic. He knew his own children better than they knew themselves. He knew they would come for the house eventually. And he knew I was the only one who would fight back.
Hello,
I pulled into the
what you
courthouse
doing?
parking lot at 7:48.
What's that, brother?
Nearly empty this early. I was first in line when the doors opened at 8, standing on the concrete steps with my folder of evidence and my heart pounding against my ribs. The building smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee.
Okay.
The security guard at the metal detector looked half asleep until I set the writ paperwork on the tray and said the word eviction. His eyes sharpened. He waved me through faster than anyone else in line. Upstairs, the civil division counter had a thin queue of people holding folders the way drowning people hold air. Everyone here was fighting something. Divorces, debts, disputes, all of it reduced to case numbers and filing fees. I waited my turn without fidgeting because every movement felt like it could be interpreted. I had learned that from childhood. My mother used to say, "You're always so dramatic," even when I was perfectly still. I learned early that my family would use my reactions against me. If I cried, I was too sensitive. If I argued, I was difficult. If I stayed quiet, I was hiding something. So I stopped giving them anything to interpret. I became a closed door. When I reached the window, I slid my ID and the writ photos forward. "I need an emergency stay and a motion to vacate," I said. I was never served. "The service address is wrong." The clerk behind the counter was a man with tired eyes and a badge clipped to his collar. He typed my case number and frowned almost immediately. "You're at this address?" he asked, reading from the file. "No," I said. "That address is my parents' old place. I have never lived there as an adult." He clicked again, pulled up a scanned document, and turned his monitor slightly so I could see. A proof of service form, a signature line with a scribble, but the printed name underneath was neat and clear. Diane Ward. My mother had not even bothered to disguise it. She had signed her own name while claiming to accept service on my behalf, like she thought no one would ever look. "She signed for it," I said quietly. "And she is the plaintiff." The clerk's eyebrows rose a fraction. "Yes, she accepted service on my behalf at an address I do not live at." He stared at the screen for a beat longer than necessary. Then he did something that told me he was not just going through the motions. He printed the proof of service form and slid it under the glass. "Highlight that," he said, voice low. "It matters." I took the paper with hands that stayed steady because I refused to let the system label me emotional. "I also own the house," I said. And I slid out the deed copy from my fireproof pouch, along with the probate distribution letter. My grandfather's name at the top. My name listed as the sole recipient of the property. The clerk looked at the deed and blinked. Then he typed again. Faster this time. His voice tightened with something that might have been disbelief. "Your parents filed this as landlords. They're claiming you're a tenant holding over." "A tenant?" I repeated, keeping my tone flat. He clicked to another scanned exhibit and turned the monitor again. A one-page rental agreement. My name typed at the top. My parents' names typed under landlord. A signature at the bottom that was supposed to be mine. It was not. It looked like someone had tried to copy my handwriting from an old birthday card and gotten bored halfway through. The loops were wrong. The slant was off. It was a forgery so lazy it almost felt insulting. "They forged it," I said. The clerk did not say yes. Clerks never say yes. But he printed that document too, and slid it under the glass alongside the first one. Then he leaned forward and said something that made my chest loosen just slightly. "If you want the judge to see this today, you need to file your emergency motion now. I can give you the forms and a hearing request slip." He handed me a packet through the slot. Thick, stapled, still warm from the printer. The words, "Emergency motion to stay," sat at the top like a life preserver in a flood. "What judge?" I asked. He checked the docket. "Judge Halprin is assigned. Can I get in front of her this morning?" He hesitated, then glanced over his shoulder toward an interior door that said Judicial Assistant. "I can try," he said, "but you need to understand." "I understand," I said gently. "If I don't get a stay, a deputy clears my house by noon." The clerk nodded once, almost imperceptibly. Then he clicked into the quitclaim deed's digital image, the one my parents claimed I had signed. He zoomed in on the notary block at the bottom. "Can I ask you a question?" "Yes." He tapped the screen with his pen. "Do you know why the notary's commission number looks odd?" My throat tightened. "Odd how?" He rotated the monitor slightly so I could see. The commission number had one digit crossed out and rewritten. A tiny correction, almost invisible unless you were trained to notice intake problems. "That correction should have triggered a rejection," he said quietly. But it didn't. It went through. I stared at the screen and felt my anger sharpen into focus. A crossed-out digit in a legal acknowledgement is not a typo. It is an opening. "Can you print that image?" He nodded once. "Yes. And I'll print the intake metadata too." When he handed me the pages, they were warm and official. Exactly what my parents could not argue with later. I thanked him like he had handed me a weapon I knew how to use. Then I went to fill out my motion. The hallway outside Department 14 was quiet. Wooden bench, fluorescent lights, the smell of old decisions and stale justice. I sat down and filled out the motion with slow, clean handwriting, not rushed, not shaky, every line deliberate. In the section that asked for supporting evidence, I listed exactly what the record already showed. Wrong address. Plaintiff signed service, forged lease, recorded deed in my name, notary commission irregularity. Then I stood and walked to the judicial assistant's window. I slid my packet under the glass. The assistant was a woman in her 40s with reading glasses perched on her nose. She read the first page, then the second. Then her eyes stopped on the proof of service. Her face changed, not dramatic, just alert. "You're saying the plaintiff accepted service on behalf of the defendant?" "Yes," I said. She stared at me for a long second. Then she stood up without another word and disappeared through the door behind her. I waited, hands folded, breathing steady, listening to muffled voices inside the judge's chambers, the sound of papers being moved, a phone ringing somewhere down the hall, the slow tick of the clock on the wall telling me how many minutes I had left before my entire life was cleared out of my grandfather's house. When the door opened again, the assistant returned holding my packet like it had suddenly gotten heavier. She leaned toward the window and spoke quietly. "Judge Halpern will see you." Relief started to bloom in my chest, but then she continued. "But I need to warn you, your parents attached one more document to their filing, and if it's what it looks like, this isn't just an eviction." My stomach tightened. "What document?" The assistant swallowed once. "A deed. A recorded deed that claims the house was transferred back to them." My body went cold. But my face stayed still. "Transferred back to them?" She nodded, eyes cautious. "It's in the court file as an exhibit. You'll see it when you're in front of the judge." I did not argue in the hallway. I did not demand to see it through the glass like a frantic person looking for someone to blame. I simply nodded and said thank you. But inside, I understood what my parents had done. They had not just forged one document. They had built an entire paper trail. A lease to make me look like a tenant. A quitclaim deed to make them look like owners. A service return to make sure I never got the chance to fight back. Layer after layer of lies stacked on top of each other like bricks in a wall designed to bury me. And in less than an hour, I was going to have to tear that wall apart in front of a judge. Or lose everything my grandfather had trusted me to protect. The courtroom was smaller than the lobby below. Dimmer, quieter, built for decisions that ruin people politely. It smelled like old wood and recycled air, like decades of desperate arguments had soaked into the walls and never quite aired out. A few attorneys sat scattered in the benches with laptops open, typing without looking up. A man in a wrinkled suit stared at his hands like he was waiting to be punished for something he had not yet confessed. And then I saw them. My parents were seated near the front with a lawyer beside them. Silver hair, calm posture, the kind of attorney people hire when they want the court to assume they are the reasonable ones. He had a leather briefcase and a gold pen, and the practiced stillness of a man who wins by making everything sound measured and fair, even when it is not. My mother wore a soft cardigan and a concerned expression, like she had come to rescue me from myself, like this whole situation was something that pained her deeply. She had always been good at that, the wounded mother routine, the long-suffering parent who only wanted what was best. It was a costume she could put on in seconds and wear for hours without breaking character. My father sat beside her with his jaw set, staring straight ahead at the empty bench where the judge would soon appear. He did not look at me when I walked in. Neither of them did. But they knew I was there. I could tell by the way my mother's shoulders shifted, the way my father's hands flattened against the table. They were not nervous. They were prepared. They had been preparing for this moment while I was sleeping in my own bed, unaware that my name was being signed on documents I had never seen. When my mother finally spotted me, she gave a small, sad smile. The kind meant to communicate disappointment to an audience. The kind designed to make anyone watching think she was the victim, and I was the problem. I did not return it. I was not here to perform. I was here to prove. The lawyer beside them stood briefly as I approached the defendant's table. "Lawrence Pike for the plaintiffs," he said to no one in particular, practicing the introduction he would give when the judge arrived. His voice was smooth. Honey poured over gravel. Confident without being arrogant. The voice of a man who had made a career out of helping people sound reasonable while they did unreasonable things. My parents had hired someone whose job was to make fraud sound like a family misunderstanding. I had a folder of evidence and no law degree, but I had something he did not: the truth, and the inability to be embarrassed by it. I studied my father as I sat down. He had not looked at me once. He sat like he had already won, hands flat on the table, possessive, like the courtroom belonged to him the way he thought the house did. I had seen that posture before. At family dinners when he announced decisions without asking anyone's opinion. At holidays when he controlled who sat where and who spoke when. He had always believed that authority was something you took, not something you earned. And now he was trying to take the last thing I had. My mother kept touching her collar, adjusting her cardigan. Small nervous gestures disguised as grooming. She was worried. She just did not want anyone to see it. For one moment her eyes met mine across the aisle. Something flickered there. Not guilt, not regret, fear. She was not afraid of losing. She was afraid of being seen. Then the mask slid back into place. The concerned mother returned. And I realized that whatever love had once existed between us had been replaced by something colder, something transactional. I was not her daughter anymore. I was an obstacle. The bailiff called the room to order. All rise. Judge Halpern entered through a door behind the bench. She was in her mid-60s with silver-streaked hair pulled back from her face, reading glasses perched on her nose, a face that had seen every kind of lie and survived. There was no warmth in her expression, no coldness either, just focus. The focus of someone who had learned to see through performance and cut straight to the bone. "Good morning," she said, settling into her chair. "We have an emergency motion to stay enforcement of a writ of possession." She looked directly at me. "Ms. Ward, you are the defendant." "Yes, Your Honor, and you are appearing without counsel today." "Yes." Her gaze flicked briefly to Pike, then back to me. She was assessing whether I could survive what was coming. I planned to prove I could. Pike stood smoothly. "Lawrence Pike for the plaintiffs, Your Honor." Judge Halpern nodded once, then looked down at the file in front of her. A frown appeared almost immediately. She had already seen something she did not like. I just did not know yet if it was something that would help me or bury me. "Ms. Ward," she said, "you understand the writ authorizes possession today." "Yes, Your Honor," the deputy said noon. She did not react to the emotion in that. She reacted to the procedure. "Tell me why I should issue an emergency stay." I slid my packet forward, hands steady, because I was never properly served. The proof of service shows the plaintiff accepted substitute service at an address I do not live at. The address is not mine, and the plaintiff signed the service form. Judge Halpern's eyes narrowed slightly. "Plaintiff signed the service form." "Yes, Your Honor." Pike smiled faintly, like he was about to explain away a technicality. "Your Honor, service was completed according to statute. Substitute service is permitted. The occupant accepted." Judge Halpern lifted her hand. "Don't recite statute at me. Answer the question. Did your client sign as the adult female occupant who accepted substitute service?" Pike hesitated. The pause was tiny but visible, the pause of a man who had hoped no one would ask directly. "Yes, Your Honor." Mrs. Ward accepted service at the address listed in the complaint as Ms. Ward's last known address. Judge Halpern's gaze snapped back to me. "Is Maple Terrace your last known address?" "No, Your Honor, I have not lived there as an adult. My driver's license, tax bills, and utility bills reflect my current address." I slid my ID and a recent utility bill forward. She scanned them quickly. Then she looked at my mother. "Mrs. Ward." Why did you accept service on behalf of the defendant at an address that is not her residence? My mother's lips trembled into practiced sorrow. Her voice went soft, wounded. Your Honor, we have tried everything. She has been unstable. She stopped answering us. We did not know what else to do. Unstable. The word hung in the air like smoke. The word my mother had used my entire life to make people stop listening to me. Every time I had a boundary, I was unstable. Every time I said no, I was unstable. Every time I tried to protect myself from her control, she pulled out that word like a weapon and aimed it at anyone who might take my side. Teachers, relatives, therapists. Anyone who got close enough to hear my side of the story first heard hers, and hers always included that word. I was 14 when I learned that unstable was a cage she built around me. I was 32 when I learned to walk out of it. Judge Halpern did not blink. That is not an answer. You either knew where she lived or you did not. My father leaned forward slightly, voice low, controlled. We were just trying to protect the property. Judge Halpern's eyes stayed sharp. Protect it from whom? My father did not answer. My mother lowered her gaze like a martyred saint accepting her suffering. The performance was flawless, and completely transparent to anyone who was actually paying attention. Pike stepped in fast, urgency creeping into his polished tone. Your Honor, the plaintiffs own the home. They had to recover possession. The defendant has been refusing to leave. Judge Halpern's gaze turned to him. Her voice tightened. I have reviewed the exhibits. One of them is a deed. My throat tightened. The deed. The forged quit claim. It was about to enter the record. Judge Halpern lifted a single page from the file and held it up so both sides could see. Exhibit C is a recorded quit-claim deed purporting to transfer the property from Tessa Ward to Mark and Diane Ward. Recorded 2 weeks ago. My mother inhaled softly. The performance of surprise. My father's face stayed flat, like he thought stillness would protect him from scrutiny. Judge Halpern looked directly at me. Ms. Ward, did you sign a quit-claim deed transferring this property to your parents 2 weeks ago? No, Your Honor. Pike's voice came in smooth. Immediate. Your Honor, we have a notarized deed on record. Judge Halpern's eyes snapped to him. I did not ask you. Pike's mouth closed. The courtroom went very quiet, the kind of quiet that happens when everyone realizes the rules have changed. When the person in charge has stopped pretending to be neutral and started paying attention to the truth. Judge Halpern looked at me again. You are saying that deed is fraudulent? Yes, Your Honor. And I can prove I was not present for any notarization. I was at work that day. My employer has access logs. Her pen stopped moving. Access logs, yes, badge entry and security camera logs, time-stamped. Pike's expression tightened. Your Honor, this is turning into a title dispute. Probate matters belong in a different department. Judge Halpern's gaze hardened.
Hello, what
This is not a probate matter right now. This is an unlawful detainer filed by people claiming to be owners, supported by a deed the defendant says she never signed, combined with a service return signed by the plaintiff at an incorrect address. She paused. Let the words settle. My parents shifted in their seats. First visible discomfort since the hearing began. I am not comfortable enforcing a writ of possession on this record, Judge Halpern said. Pike opened his mouth to object. She cut him off. I will address the stay first. Miss Ward, do you have proof of current recorded ownership in your name? Yes, Your Honor. I pulled out the recorder's office printout I had requested that morning from the clerk downstairs. Property record summary. Stamped official. Judge Halpern took it. Scanned. Her eyebrows rose slightly. It shows the property was distributed to you through your grandfather's estate, recorded last year. Then it shows a quitclaim deed 2 weeks ago transferring it to your parents. She looked at me again. And you are denying you signed that quitclaim? Yes. Judge Halpern leaned back slightly and stared at the deed exhibit. Then she looked at the notary block at the bottom of the page. Her eyes narrowed. She studied it for a long moment. Then she tapped the notary commission number with her pen. Mr. Pike. Pike stood too quickly. Your Honor, whose notary is this? Pike blinked, confusion flickering across his face. Your Honor? Whose notary? Judge Halpern repeated, sharper. Pike glanced down at the document in front of him. It appears to be a notary named Carla Mendez. Judge Halpern looked at my father. Mr. Ward. Do you know Carla Mendez? My father's mouth opened, then closed. My mother answered for him, voice thin, cracking slightly. She is a friend. Judge Halprin's gaze stayed fixed. A friend who notarized a deed transferring your daughter's inherited home to you 2 weeks ago. Silence. Then I am going to need Ms. Mendez to appear in this courtroom, with her notary journal, tomorrow morning. My mother's face went pale. My father's jaw tightened so hard a muscle jumped. Because a notary journal is not a story. It is timestamps, signatures, ID numbers, in some states, thumbprints. It is evidence that cannot be rewritten after the fact, and my parents had just been ordered to produce theirs. Pike tried one more time. Your Honor, the journal is not strictly necessary to validate. Judge Halprin raised a hand. Stop, I said tomorrow morning. The notary will appear. With the journal, and if there are any discrepancies between what that journal shows and what this deed claims, we will have a very different conversation. She looked at me. Ms. Ward, I am issuing a temporary stay on the writ of possession. The sheriff will be notified. No one removes you from that property until this matter is resolved. My lungs loosened. Just slightly. But Judge Halprin was not finished, and I want you to understand something. If this deed is fraudulent, you are not just fighting an eviction. You are fighting a crime. Bring your employment records tomorrow. Bring everything you have, because I intend to get to the bottom of this. She looked at my parents one last time. And I suggest you bring more than a friend with a notary stamp. Because right now, your case has more holes than evidence. And I do not like being lied to in my courtroom. She stood. The bailiff called the room to rise. And as Judge Halprin disappeared through the door behind the bench, I felt something shift inside me. Not victory, not yet. But the first real crack in the wall my parents had built. And tomorrow, I was going to tear the rest of it down. The stay was issued with a single sentence. Judge Halprin did not raise her voice. She did not make a speech. She simply said the words that meant my parents could not take my house today. I am issuing an emergency stay of the writ of possession, effective immediately. Notify the sheriff's civil unit. My lungs loosened in a quiet, controlled exhale. Not relief, not yet. But the first crack in the wall my parents had built around me. The first sign that the system might actually work when you gave it evidence instead of excuses. Judge Halprin continued, her voice crisp and efficient. This stay is pending a hearing on the motion to vacate default and a referral for potential fraud regarding the deed. My mother made a sound, half gasp, half something else. Not grief, recognition. The sound of someone realizing the performance is over and the audience has seen backstage. Your Honor, my mother began, her voice climbing toward that wounded pitch she used when she wanted sympathy. Stop. One word. Final. I had never seen anyone silence her that fast. I had spent 32 years trying. You do not get to speak now, Judge Halprin said. Her eyes stayed fixed on my mother with the cold patience of someone who had heard every excuse and believed none of them. She turned to me. Ms. Ward, I need you to understand something. If this deed is fraudulent, you need more than an eviction stay. You need to protect the title immediately. I know, Your Honor. She nodded once. Good. This court is ordering that the county recorder be notified of a potential fraudulent conveyance. Pike's face went pale. The color drained from his expensive tan like someone had pulled a plug. He opened his mouth to object, but Judge Halprin was not finished. And I want the notary to appear in person with her journal. My father's jaw tightened so hard a muscle jumped beneath the skin. First real movement since the hearing began. He was not angry at the judge. He was angry at himself, because he had just realized they had left a trail of timestamps and signatures and ID numbers that could not be rewritten after the fact. Hearing set for tomorrow morning, Judge Halprin said. Ms. Ward, bring your employment access logs. Plaintiffs will bring the notary and the original deed. If anyone fails to appear, there will be consequences. My mother's lips parted. For the first time, the concerned mask looked like what it was. Fear. Not fear of losing. Fear of being caught. Fear of what would happen when someone finally pulled back the curtain and saw the machinery underneath. The hearing ended with paperwork and stamps and the kind of silence that only comes after people realize the system is no longer on their side. The bailiff handed Pike the stay order to distribute. I took my copy and folded it carefully. This paper was a shield now. The first real protection I had held in my hand since a deputy pounded on my door at 6 in the morning. I walked out without looking at my parents. I could hear Pike speaking to them in quick, low sentences, trying to get them out of the building before someone decided to ask more questions. But I did not care about their exit strategy. I cared about my own. I was halfway down the hallway when I heard footsteps behind me. Faster than normal. My mother's voice came low and urgent, stripped of its sweetness. "You think this ends it?" I did not stop walking. She caught up to me, her heels clicking sharp against the tile floor. "You do not understand what you just started." I kept my pace steady. "I understand perfectly. You forged a deed. You lied to a court. And now there is a record." She grabbed my arm. First physical contact in years. Her fingers dug in with a desperation I had never felt from her before. That house was supposed to stay in the family. I stopped, turned, looked at her hand on my arm. Then I looked at her face. The mask was completely gone now. Underneath was something I had seen glimpses of my whole life but never fully. Rage, entitlement, the absolute certainty that she deserved what she wanted, regardless of who it belonged to, regardless of who it hurt. That was the woman who raised me. That was the woman the court was finally seeing. "It did stay in the family," I said quietly. "Grandpa made sure of it." I pulled my arm free. My father stood 20 feet back, watching but not approaching. He had always let her do the dirty work. Then he would step in later to seem reasonable. But there was nothing reasonable about forging your daughter's signature. And he knew it. "We will see you in court tomorrow," I said. And I walked out into the sunlight without giving them another word. The drive home took longer than it should have. I took back roads, watching my mirrors, making sure no one was following. Paranoia, maybe. But paranoia felt appropriate when your parents had just tried to steal your house with forged documents. My hands finally shook once I was alone in the car. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, breathed in through my nose, out through my mouth. I gave myself 60 seconds to fall apart. Then I put myself back together. I drove past the street where my grandfather used to live, before he got sick, before the house became mine. I remembered visiting him there as a child, the smell of pipe tobacco and wood polish, the way he would let me help him fix things around the house. "You are good with your hands," he would say, like me. I remembered a conversation we had 2 years before he died, sitting on his porch, watching the sunset. "Your parents came to see me yesterday," he said. "They want me to change my will." I stayed quiet. I told them no. He took a sip of his iced tea. "They said I was being unfair to the family." "Why are you giving it to me?" I asked. He looked at me with tired eyes. "Because you are the only one who never asked for it." He said something else that day, something I did not understand until now. He said, "Keep the papers safe, and do not trust anyone who tells you family does not need paperwork." I thought he was being paranoid. He was being prophetic. He knew his own children better than they knew themselves. He knew they would come for the house eventually, and he knew I was the only one who would fight back. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment. The house looked the same. Same windows, same door, same porch where Deputy Romero had stood this morning holding papers that were supposed to end my life here. But it looked different now. I was not coming home. I was coming to defend what was mine. Inside, I locked the door behind me, slid the deadbolt, checked the back door, the windows, all the entry points. Not because I thought they would break in. Because I had learned that people who forge documents do not stop at one crime. I walked through the house, checking each room. Everything was in place, but something felt different. The air, maybe, or the silence. Then I saw it, a small envelope on the kitchen counter. I had not left an envelope on the counter. Someone had been inside while I was at court. My heart rate spiked. I opened it with careful fingers. Inside was a single photograph, my grandfather's gravestone. On the back, handwritten in neat block letters, "He cannot protect you anymore." My hands did not shake. They went still, cold, focused. Because this was not grief. This was evidence. I photographed the envelope, the note, the image, documented the location where I found it, checked for other signs of entry but found nothing else disturbed. They had come in, left their message, and left. A warning, a threat, a reminder that they could reach me anywhere. I sat at the kitchen table and called my employer's security office. The line picked up on the second ring. "Security," a man answered. "This is Tessa Ward. I need badge access logs for 2 weeks ago, the entire day of the 13th. There was a pause. Why? Because a deed was filed claiming I signed it in front of a notary that day, and I need to document where I was. The tone on the other end shifted instantly. Understood. I will need an email request and a case number if there is one. I have one. I gave him the case number. He did not ask if I was okay. He did not need to. He said, "We will pull badge entries and parking gate logs. If the cameras still have footage, we will preserve it." Preserve. That word felt like protection. Like someone else understood that documentation was the only language that mattered when people started lying. I ended the call and looked out my front window. My parents' car was gone from across the street. But I knew they would be back. They always came back. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. One sentence on the screen. "If you show up tomorrow, you will lose more than a house." My skin went cold. Not because I was scared, because threats meant they knew what was coming, and they did not think they could stop it cleanly. Desperate people do not send threats. They send solutions. Threats mean they have run out of solutions. I did not reply. I screenshotted the message, saved it to a folder labeled with the case number, forwarded it to myself with the subject line. Threat received night before hearing. Documentation is not revenge. It is insurance. I spent the evening building what I came to think of as the evidence wall. Kitchen table covered with documents, each one organized by category. The deed from my grandfather's estate, the forged quitclaim deed with the crossed-out notary number, the proof of service signed by my mother at the wrong address, the forged rental agreement, the property tax statements in my name, the utility bills, the photographs of the envelope and gravestone threat. Everything laid out in order, everything labeled, everything ready. I knew what I had. I also knew what I did not have. The notary's journal, that was the key. A notary journal has timestamps, signatures, ID numbers. In some states, thumbprints. If Carla Mendez had actually followed procedure, her journal would show she had never seen me. And if she had not followed procedure, that was a crime all by itself. The question was whether my parents would sacrifice their friend to save themselves, or whether Carla Mendez would walk into that courtroom and tell the truth. I did not know, but I knew one thing. People who lie for money usually stop lying when the cost gets too high. And tomorrow, the cost was going to get very high indeed. I forced myself to go to bed around 11, not peacefully, not easily, but exhaustion makes you careless. And my parents had built their entire plan around me being too tired, too shocked, too alone to fight. Tomorrow, I would prove them wrong. I was drifting toward sleep when I heard it. A car door closing outside. Then another. Footsteps on the front walk. The doorbell rang once. Then again. I did not move from bed. I opened my phone camera and started recording audio. Captured the timestamp. My mother's voice came through the door, muffled but clear. "Tessa, open the door. Pause. We can still fix this. Just sign the papers and this all goes away." My father's voice followed. Lower. Colder. "You have until morning to make the right choice." After that, we stopped being nice. I did not go to the door. I did not answer. I just kept recording. They thought silence meant surrender. They did not understand. Silence was my weapon now. Footsteps retreated. Car doors closed. Engine started, faded away. I stopped recording. Saved the file. Labeled it, "Parents at door, midnight, night before hearing." They had just added another piece to my evidence file. And tomorrow, I was going to make sure they regretted every single one. I slept 3 hours. Maybe 4. But when the alarm went off at 7, I was already awake, already dressed, already running through the evidence in my head like a prayer I could not afford to forget. I showered quickly, put on clothes that said I took this seriously without trying too hard, and grabbed the folder that held everything. Badge logs from my employer, parking gate records with time-stamped license plate scans, the certification email from the security director, the photographs of the forged documents, the recording of my parents at my door at midnight. Every piece of paper was a weapon, every timestamp was a shield, and today I was going to use all of them. I arrived at Department 14 at 8:45, 15 minutes early. The courtroom doors were already open, the same wooden benches, the same dim light, the same smell of old decisions and stale justice. But today it felt different. Today it felt like the room was waiting for something to break. My parents were already there, seated in the same spot as yesterday. Pike beside them, briefcase open, papers spread across the table like he was preparing for a war he was no longer sure he could win. But there was a fourth person today. Sitting behind them, a woman I had never seen before. She was in her mid-50s, maybe older, hair pulled back too tight, purse clutched against her chest like a shield. She was not looking at anyone, not Pike, not my parents, not the door. She was looking at her own hands like she was trying to remember what they had done, like she was already rehearsing her apology, or her excuse. That was Carla Mendez, the notary who claimed she had watched me sign a deed I had never touched, and she looked exactly like someone who knew today was going to be bad. I studied her as I took my seat at the defendant's table. She wore a blazer that did not quite fit, like she had borrowed it for the occasion, lipstick slightly smudged at the corner, applied with shaking hands maybe, a wedding ring she kept twisting back and forth on her finger, a nervous habit, or a prayer. She had not looked at my parents once since I walked in, not since I sat down, not since Pike leaned over to whisper something in my father's ear. People who are comfortable with their co-conspirators make eye contact. Carla Mendez was treating them like strangers, or like people she wished she had never met. My mother leaned back slightly, whispered something to Carla. Carla nodded but did not turn. Her shoulders tightened. Whatever my mother said, it did not comfort her. It cornered her. My father had not moved. Same flat expression as yesterday. But there was something different in his posture. Tension in the neck, the shoulders. He was holding himself together by force of will, like a man waiting for a bomb to go off and pretending he did not hear the ticking. Pike reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small black book. Hard cover, worn edges. He set it on the table between himself and Carla. She stared at it like it was a loaded gun. The notary journal. Every notarization Carla Mendez had performed was in that book. Dates, times, names, ID numbers, signatures. And somewhere in those pages was the lie that was supposed to take my grandfather's house. Today we were going to read it out loud. The bailiff called the room to order. All rise. Judge Halprin entered through the door behind the bench. Same focused expression as yesterday, but today there was something sharper underneath. She had had a night to think about what she had seen, and she did not like the conclusions. "Good morning," she said, settling into her chair. "We are here on continued hearing regarding case number." She read the number without looking up. "Yesterday I ordered the appearance of the notary public who notarized the quitclaim deed at issue." She looked up. "Is the notary present?" Pike stood slowly. "Yes, Your Honor, Ms. Carla Mendez is present." He gestured toward Carla. She did not stand, did not move, just sat there with her hands folded in her lap like a child waiting to be scolded. Judge Halprin's eyes narrowed. "Ms. Mendez, approach." Carla finally rose, movements stiff, mechanical. She walked to the front of the courtroom like she was walking to her own sentencing. Her heels clicked against the floor in an uneven rhythm. Her breathing was audible in the silence. Judge Halprin extended her hand. "Your notary journal." Carla looked at Pike. Pike nodded once. Carla reached into her purse and pulled out a black journal identical to the one Pike had placed on his table. She had her own copy. Pike had a copy too, which meant someone had prepared for this moment, just not well enough. Judge Halprin took the journal. The courtroom went silent as she flipped through the pages. Slowly, deliberately. The sound of paper turning was the only noise in the room. Each page was a record. Each record was supposed to be true. We were about to find out if any of them were. Judge Halprin stopped, finger on a specific line. Her expression did not change, but something in her stillness told me she had found what she was looking for. "Ms. Mendez, is this the entry for the notarization in question?" Carla swallowed. "Yes, Your Honor," Judge Halprin read aloud, slowly, deliberately, each word measured and precise. Entry dated the 13th of last month. Document type, quitclaim deed. Signer, Tessa Ward. Identification, driver's license.
Hello,
She paused.
what you doing?
License number ending in 931. My heart stopped for exactly one beat, then restarted harder. 931. My license does not end in 931. It ends in 617. And I had told the court that yesterday. Judge Halprin looked up from the journal. Her eyes moved from the page to me. "Ms. Ward, what are the last 3 digits of your driver's license number?" I answered without hesitation. 617, Your Honor. The courtroom went still. The kind of still that happens when everyone realizes something has gone very wrong. Or very right, depending on which side of the lie you were standing on. Judge Halprin looked at Carla. Her voice dropped half a register. Ms. Mendez, the journal entry does not match the defendant's actual license number. Explain. Carla's lips parted, closed again. Her eyes flicked to Pike. Pike's expression was frozen. No help coming from that direction. Carla's voice came out thin. Reedy. It could be a clerical error, Your Honor? A clerical error? Judge Halpern repeated the words without inflection. You are telling me you verified identification, recorded the wrong number, and did not notice? Carla did not answer. Her silence was louder than any confession. Judge Halpern opened the journal to another section, the signature line. This is the signature you claim to have witnessed? She held up the page so everyone could see. A scribble that looked nothing like my handwriting, nothing like the clean, consistent signature on every document I had ever signed. Judge Halpern pulled out my court filings from yesterday. My emergency motion, my signature at the bottom, she held them side by side. Ms. Mendez, do these signatures look the same to you? Carla's breaking point arrived. Her voice cracked. Tears started to form in her eyes. Your Honor, I just did what I was asked to do. The courtroom fell completely silent. Judge Halpern's eyes narrowed. What you were asked to do? By whom? Carla's gaze darted toward the plaintiff's table, just for a second. But everyone saw it. My mother, my father, the people who had asked her to lie. Pike stood quickly, voice cracking with urgency. Your Honor, my client would like to request a brief recess. Judge Halpern did not even look at him. Denied. Pike sat back down. The color had drained from his face. He was a man who had finally understood what he had been defending. And he did not like the view. Judge Halpern turned back to me. Ms. Ward, you stated yesterday that you have employment records proving your whereabouts on the 13th. Yes, Your Honor. Present them. I stood. Walked to the front with my folder, handed the pages to the bailiff, who handed them to the judge. Badge access logs from my employer's security office, I said. Parking gate logs with time-stamped license plate scan, and a certification email from the security director. Judge Halpern scanned the first page. Her eyebrows rose slightly. This shows you entered your workplace at 7:52 in the morning. Yes, Your Honor, and you did not leave until 6:14 in the evening. Correct. No gap, no departure, no time to drive to a notary and sign a deed. Judge Halpern looked at Carla. Ms. Mendez, what time did you notarize this deed? Carla's voice was barely audible. Around noon, Your Honor. Judge Halpern did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Your journal lists the time as 12:15. The defendant was inside a secured building at 12:15, with internal door access recorded. She did not leave. I could not have been in two places at once, and the record need to. Your journal lists the time as 12:15. The defendant was inside a secured building at 12:15, with internal door access recorded. She did not leave. I could not have been in two places at once, and the records proved it. Every timestamp, every log, every scan, they all said the same thing. I was not there, which meant someone else had been pretending to be me. Pike stood again, voice cracking with desperation. Your Honor, these employment records are hearsay. They have not been properly authenticated. Judge Halpern looked at him with the patience of someone explaining gravity to a child. They are certified by the security director, and your notary journal has an incorrect driver's license number. Which record do you think I find more credible? Pike opened his mouth, closed it. I had seen lawyers lose arguments before. I had never seen one realize he was standing next to criminals. That was what his face looked like. The face of a man who finally understood the company he was keeping. My mother was not crying anymore. She was frozen. The cardigan looked ridiculous now, a costume for a play that was closing early. My father stared straight ahead, but his hands were gripping the table edge. White-knuckled, like he was holding on to the last shred of a plan that had already fallen apart. Carla's tears were streaming down her face now, not performance tears, the real kind. The kind that come when you realize the lie is too big to carry anymore, and you are about to drop it in front of everyone. Judge Halpern set down the journal, set down the employment logs, folded her hands, looked directly at Carla Mendez. Ms. Mendez, I am going to ask you one last time, and I want you to think very carefully about your answer, because your notary commission, and potentially your freedom, depends on it. The courtroom went completely silent. Carla's shoulders shook. Her eyes darted to my parents one more time. My mother shook her head. Tiny, desperate, a silent command to keep the lie alive. My father did not move at all. He had already started calculating the distance between himself and the disaster unfolding in front of him. Judge Halpern spoke, her voice calm, final. "Did you witness Tessa Ward sign this deed?" Carla's mouth trembled, her hands clutched the witness stand railing. The tears fell faster now. She looked at my parents. She looked at the journal. She looked at me. And I saw the moment she decided, not to protect them, not to save herself, but to finally, after all of it, tell the truth. She opened her mouth to answer, and the word that came out changed everything. No. The word came out barely above a whisper, but in the silence of that courtroom, it sounded like thunder. Carla Mendez stood at the witness stand, with tears streaming down her face, and her hands gripping the railing so hard her knuckles had gone white. She was shaking, trembling with the weight of a lie she could no longer carry. Judge Halpern leaned forward slightly. "I need you to speak clearly for the record, Ms. Mendez." Carla inhaled, shaky, broken. But when she spoke again, her voice was clearer, stronger. Like confession had given her back something she had lost. "No, Your Honor. I did not witness Tessa Ward sign this deed." The courtroom did not explode. It just reset. Like truth had flipped a switch, and everything in the room was now on a different circuit. My parents were no longer plaintiffs, seeking possession of their property. They were suspects in a fraud case that had just cracked open in front of a judge who did not tolerate being lied to. And everyone knew it. I did not feel triumph. I felt something quieter. The relief of being believed, the exhaustion of having to prove what should have been obvious. That I would not forge away my own grandfather's gift. That I would not sign over the only thing that connected me to someone who had actually loved me. That I was not the person my parents had spent my whole life telling people I was. No one moved. The bailiff's hand rested on his belt out of instinct. The court reporter's fingers hovered frozen above the keys. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause, waiting to see what would happen next. My mother made a small sound, half gasp, half something else. Not grief. Recognition. The sound of someone realizing the performance is over, and the audience has seen backstage. She had built her entire life on the assumption that no one would ever look too closely, that her version of events would always be the one that mattered. And now a judge was looking very closely indeed. My father did not make a sound, did not move. But something shifted behind his eyes. He was not processing defeat. He was calculating distance. How far he could get from this moment, how much he could claim he did not know, how quickly he could throw everyone else under the bus to save himself. I had seen that look before. When my grandfather confronted him about the will, when business deals went wrong and partners needed to be blamed. He had been planning his exit even then, except this time there was no exit. The doors were closed and the record was open, and everything he had done was about to be read into it. Pike's face looked like he had been slapped. The color had drained from his expensive tan. He had taken their money to make fraud look reasonable, and now he was standing in the wreckage of his reputation, wondering how much of it would stick to him. Carla continued without being prompted, the words rushing out like a dam breaking. They told me she had agreed to transfer it. They said it was just paperwork, a family matter. They gave me her ID. They had her signature on a card. I did not ask questions I should have asked. Judge Halpern's eyes sharpened. They gave you her ID. Carla nodded, tears flowing freely. A driver's license. I thought it was real. It had her picture, her name. But the number must have been different. Someone had made a fake ID, with my face on it. And my parents had handed it to a notary like it was nothing. Like forging identification documents was just another item on their to-do list. Pick up dry cleaning. Forge daughter's ID. Steal grandfather's house. The casualness of it made my stomach turn. Judge Halpern set down the journal, set down my employment logs, folded her hands with the precision of someone about to deliver a verdict. This court is vacating the default judgment entered against Tessa Ward. Her pen scratched across paper. Official. Final. The judgment that was supposed to take my house. Erased. The writ of possession is dissolved. The unlawful detainer action is dismissed for lack of proper service and lack of standing. Lack of standing. 3 words that meant everything. My parents had filed as landlords, as owners. But they were not owners. They were thieves who had not finished stealing yet. And the court had just named it. Mark Ward, Diane Ward, stand. My parents rose slowly, like gravity had changed, like the floor was pulling them down and they were fighting it with every muscle. This court is referring the quitclaim deed to the district attorney's office for investigation of fraudulent conveyance and conspiracy. Pike's face went gray. My mother's hand flew to her throat. My father's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. There was nothing to say. The words were already in the record. This court is also referring the notary, Carla Mendez, to the commissioning authority for potential revocation and further investigation. Carla made a small wounded sound. She had traded her integrity for whatever my parents had offered her. Money, probably. Or maybe just the illusion of friendship. And now she was going to lose everything she had tried to protect. 4 rulings. 4 sentences that dismantled everything they had built. The eviction. The deed. The lie. All of it collapsing under the weight of one notary's confession and one judge who refused to look away. My mother broke first. "Your Honor, please." Her voice was high, desperate, the soft cardigan forgotten, the concerned mother gone. "We were just trying to keep the house in the family. She was going to sell it. She was going to—" "Stop!" Judge Halprin's voice cut through like a blade. "You do not get to explain. You get to hire a criminal defense attorney. That is what you get to do now." I watched my mother's face transform. The mask did not slip. It shattered. Underneath was something I had seen glimpses of my whole life. Rage, entitlement, the absolute certainty that she deserved what she wanted regardless of who it belonged to, regardless of who it hurt. That was the woman who raised me. And that was the woman the court was finally seeing. My father put a hand on my mother's arm. "Diane. Enough." He was not comforting her. He was silencing her. Every word she said was a confession he would have to explain later. And he knew it. "Your Honor," my father said, his voice controlled despite everything. "My wife is upset. This has been a difficult—" Judge Halprin cut him off. "Mr. Ward, you filed an eviction using a forged lease. You submitted a fraudulent deed as evidence. You arranged for a notary to verify a signature she never witnessed. This is not a difficult situation. This is a crime scene, and you are standing in the middle of it." Pike stood slowly, briefcase already closing. "Your Honor, at this time I need to assess my representation of the plaintiffs." Judge Halprin looked at him with something that might have been contempt. "You do that. You may want to consider whether you had knowledge of the document's origins." Pike's face went from gray to white. "I had no knowledge, Your Honor. I was provided—" "Don't!" Judge Halprin raised a hand. "Don't make statements on the record right now. You are an officer of the court. You know better." Pike closed his mouth, nodded once. "Understood, Your Honor." He did not look at my parents, did not speak to them. He gathered his papers with mechanical precision and moved toward the aisle like a man desperate to be anywhere else. He was already composing his withdrawal motion in his head, already calculating how to make this someone else's problem. That is what expensive lawyers do. They do not go down with the ship. They get in the lifeboat and bill for the rowing. For the first time in the hearing, my parents were alone. No lawyer whispering reassurances, no cardigan to hide behind. Just 2 people who had bet everything on a lie. And lost. Judge Halprin turned to me. "Ms. Ward, you will obtain a certified copy of today's order. Record it with the county recorder immediately. File a title correction through the proper civil channel." "Yes, Your Honor. Based on what I have heard, including the notary's testimony about a fraudulent ID, I strongly recommend you pursue an emergency restraining order. Against your parents." "A restraining order. Against the people who gave me life. Against the mother who used to braid my hair. Against the father who taught me to ride a bike. Before they became the people who forged my name. Before they became strangers wearing familiar faces." I nodded, because protection mattered more than sentiment, and they had proven they could not be trusted with access to my life. "And if either plaintiff attempts any further action to remove Ms. Ward from that property," Judge Halprin continued, "contact law enforcement immediately. This court's orders are not suggestions. Violations will result in contempt at minimum, criminal charges at maximum. Are we clear?" My father nodded once. Mechanical. My mother did not respond, just stared at the table like she was watching her entire plan dissolve into the wood grain. The bailiff handed out papers. "Stay order, dismissal order, referral notices. Each stamp was a nail in the coffin they had built for me, and I was walking away with all of them. I took my copies from the bailiff, folded them carefully, placed them in my folder, did not look at my parents, walked toward the door. Tessa, my mother's voice. Not a whisper this time, loud enough for the whole courtroom. Tessa, please, we can work this out. We are family. I stopped. Hand on the door. Did not turn around. You stopped being my family when you forged my name. I kept my voice steady. You stopped being my family when you lied to a judge. You stopped being my family when you tried to steal what Grandpa left me. I paused. Let the silence stretch. We are not family anymore. We are a court case. I pushed through the door and walked into the hallway without looking back. The air was cooler out here. Quieter. I had won. Or at least I had survived. The eviction was dead. The deed was flagged. The truth was on the record. But walking away from your parents in a courthouse does not feel like victory. It feels like surgery. Necessary, painful, and permanent. Outside, the sunlight hit my face. Same sun as yesterday. Same world. But I was not the same person who had walked in. I was someone who had learned exactly how far her parents would go, and exactly how far she would go to stop them. I reached my car in the parking garage, unlocked it, sat behind the wheel, did not start the engine yet. Just sat there in the silence, processing. The eviction was over. The deed was being investigated. The notary had confessed. But one thing kept circling in my mind. One detail that did not fit. Carla said they gave her an ID, a driver's license with my face, my name. But a different number. Someone had to make that ID.
Hello,
Someone had to get my photograph. Someone had to know enough about me to create a convincing forgery. My parents were many things, manipulative, entitled, cruel. But they were not technical. They did not know how to forge documents. They did not have access to the kind of equipment that makes fake IDs, which meant someone helped them. Someone I had not seen in that courtroom. My phone buzzed. Unknown number again. New message. You won the hearing. Congratulations. But you have not found everyone yet. And you should probably ask your parents about their friend, Gerald. Before he asks about you. Gerald. I did not know anyone named Gerald. But apparently he knew me. And apparently he was not finished. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I screenshotted it. Saved it to my evidence folder. Because whoever Gerald was, he had just made himself part of the case, and I was going to find out exactly what he had done. The courtroom battle was over. But something else was just beginning. Something that went deeper than forged deeds and fake leases. Something that had been hiding in the shadows while I fought the enemies I could see. Gerald. I was going to find him, and when I did, he was going to answer for everything. Gerald. The name sat in my mind like a splinter I could not reach. I did not know anyone named Gerald. I had never heard my parents mention a Gerald. But someone with that name had sent me a message that suggested he knew exactly what had happened in that courtroom, and he wanted me to know he was watching. I sat in my car in the courthouse parking garage for 10 minutes after receiving that text, thinking, processing, trying to understand what I was missing. My parents had forged documents. They had hired a notary to lie. They had created a fake ID with my face and a wrong license number. But none of that explained Gerald. None of that explained how someone I had never met knew enough about me to send threatening messages. Unless Gerald was not a stranger at all. Unless he was the missing piece I had not known to look for. I drove straight to the county recorder's office. The stay order needed to be recorded immediately. Judge Halprin had been clear about that. Protect the title. Make sure no one could file any more fraudulent documents against my property while the investigation was ongoing. The recorder's office was on the 3rd floor of a building that smelled like old paper and bureaucratic patience. I took a number and waited in a plastic chair surrounded by people holding documents that would change their lives. Marriage certificates, property transfers, lien releases. All of it reduced to stamps and filing fees, and the indifferent efficiency of government workers who had seen it all before. When my number was called, I approached the counter and slid my paperwork forward. The clerk was a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and efficient hands. She scanned the stay order, the dismissal, the fraud referral notice. Her eyebrows rose slightly when she saw the case number. "You were here yesterday," she said. "Filed a fraud alert on this parcel." "Yes." She typed something into her computer, pulled up my property record. Looked at the screen for a long moment. "The quit claim deed is still showing as recorded," she said. The fraud alert flags it for review, but it does not remove it from the chain of title. You will need a court order to actually void the deed. I know. That is what the DA investigation is for. She nodded, stamped my documents, recorded them into the system. Then she did something unexpected. She leaned forward slightly and lowered her voice. I looked at this deed yesterday after you left. The notary acknowledgement. What about it? She glanced around to make sure no one was listening. The commission number, with the crossed-out digit. I remembered. The clerk from Civil Division had shown me the same thing. A tiny correction that should have triggered a rejection, but somehow went through. I ran the number, she said quietly. The original number, before the correction. It belongs to a notary named Gerald Hoffman. The corrected number belongs to Carla Mendez. My breath caught. Gerald. She saw my reaction. You know that name? I just received a text mentioning someone named Gerald. I thought it was a first name. Gerald Hoffman, she said. He was a notary in this county until about 10 years ago. His commission was revoked for falsifying documents. I stared at her. He was a notary? Was. The state pulled his commission after he got caught notarizing signatures he never witnessed. Sound familiar? It sounded exactly like what Carla Mendez had just confessed to doing, except Gerald Hoffman had been caught and punished. And apparently, he had not stopped working. Do you have an address for him? I asked. She shook her head. That information would not be public anymore. His commission file is sealed since the revocation, but he is connected to this deed somehow. His old commission number was on the document before it was corrected. She held my gaze for a moment. I cannot tell you what to do with that information. But if I were you, I would want to know why a revoked notary's number appeared on a forged deed, and why someone corrected it to a different notary before filing. I thanked her and walked out of the recorder's office with my mind racing. Gerald Hoffman, a disgraced notary with a revoked commission. Someone who knew how to forge documents because he had been caught doing it before. Someone whose commission number had been on my deed before it was changed to Carla Mendez. That was not a coincidence. That was a connection. I drove home and locked myself inside, opened my laptop, started searching. Gerald Hoffman was not hard to find once I knew what I was looking for. Public records showed a bankruptcy filing 8 years ago, a foreclosure on a property in Ridgewood 5 years after that, a string of civil judgments for unpaid debts, the portrait of a man whose life had collapsed after losing his notary commission, a man who might be desperate enough to help people forge documents for money. But the real discovery came when I searched for connections between Gerald Hoffman and my father. I found a business registration from 1992, a printing company called Hoffman and Ward Printing Services. 2 names listed as partners. Gerald Hoffman, Mark Ward. My father and Gerald had been business partners 30 years ago, before I was born, before the family moved up in the world, before my parents became the polished, respectable people they pretended to be. They had started a printing business together, a business that would know how to create documents, how to make things look official, how to forge. I kept digging. The business had dissolved in 1997. No public record of why. But I found a civil court case from the same year, Hoffman versus Ward. A lawsuit that had been settled out of court. The details were sealed, but the existence of the case told me enough. Gerald and my father had been partners. Then they had become enemies. And now, 25 years later, Gerald's commission number had appeared on a forged deed designed to steal my house. I pulled out my phone and looked at the text message again. You should probably ask your parents about their friend Gerald before he asks about you. Friend. The word dripped with sarcasm. Gerald was not my parents' friend. He was someone they had wronged decades ago. Someone who might have been waiting for an opportunity to get even, or someone they had pulled back into their orbit when they needed someone who knew how to make fake documents. I needed to find him. I needed to understand what his role was in all of this. But I also needed to be careful. The text had felt like a warning, maybe a threat. Gerald knew my phone number. He knew about the hearing. He knew things he should not know unless he was deeply involved. Walking up to his door unprepared could be dangerous. I called Detective Reyes at the DA's office. The referral from Judge Halprin had included her contact information. She answered on the 3rd ring. This is Detective Reyes. This is Tessa Ward. Judge Halprin referred my case to your office this morning. Fraudulent deed and conspiracy. Yes, Ms. Ward, I have the file on my desk. What can I do for you? I found something, a name. Gerald Hoffman. He was a notary whose commission was revoked 10 years ago. His old commission number appeared on the forged deed before it was corrected to Carla Mendez. There was a pause. How did you discover this? The county recorder's clerk noticed the correction. She looked up both numbers. Another pause. Longer this time. Ms. Ward, I appreciate you sharing this information, but I need to ask you not to pursue this on your own. If Gerald Hoffman is involved, this investigation just became more complicated. Let us handle it. I understand, I said. But I need to tell you something else. I received a text message today from an unknown number. It mentioned Gerald by name, suggested I ask my parents about him. Detective Reyes was quiet for a moment. Forward that message to me, along with any other threatening communications you have received. I will. And Ms. Ward. Be careful. If someone is watching you closely enough to know about Gerald, they are watching closely enough to know when you leave your house. Do not go anywhere alone until we understand what we are dealing with. I ended the call and forwarded her the text messages. The threat from the night before the hearing, the message about Gerald, the midnight recording of my parents at my door. Everything went into an email with a timeline and my notes about what I had discovered. Then I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my phone. Detective Reyes had told me to stay home, to let the professionals handle it, to be careful. It was good advice, smart advice, the kind of advice that keeps people safe. But I had never been good at waiting while other people decided my fate. I had spent my entire life watching my parents control narratives, manipulate situations, and hurt people who got in their way. I had spent the last 2 days fighting for my house in a courtroom while they sat across the aisle and lied to a judge. I was done waiting. I went back to my laptop and kept searching. Gerald Hoffman had an address listed on his old bankruptcy filing. Ridgewood, a small ranch house in a neighborhood that had seen better days. The property records showed it was still in his name, still his residence as far as the county was concerned. He might not be there anymore. People who lose everything tend to move around. But it was a place to start. I printed the address, put it in my folder with everything else. Then I called my employer's security office one more time. This is Tessa Ward. I need one more thing. The security director's voice was cautious. What do you need? My parents had a business partner in the early 90s. Gerald Hoffman. I need to know if there is any connection between him and anyone currently employed at our company, anyone who might have had access to my badge logs or personnel file. There was a long pause. Ms. Ward, that is a significant request. I would need authorization from HR and potentially legal, I understand. But someone made a fake ID with my photograph. Someone knew enough about me to create convincing forgeries. If that person had inside access, I need to know. Give me 24 hours. He said. I will see what I can find. I ended the call and looked at the clock. It was just after 2 in the afternoon. I had spent hours researching, calling, documenting. The house was quiet around me. The same house my grandfather had left me. The same house my parents had tried to steal. The same house that apparently contained secrets I had not yet found. I walked through the rooms slowly, looking at everything with new eyes. My grandfather had known about my parents. He had known what they were capable of. He had left me the house and told me to keep the papers safe. What else had he known? What else had he hidden? I ended up in his old study, the room I used as a home office now. His desk was still here, his bookshelves still full of volumes I had never taken the time to read. I had rearranged some things, added my own books, but I had never emptied his shelves, never gone through the drawers properly, because going through a dead man's things felt like saying goodbye again, and I had not been ready. Maybe it was time to be ready. I started with the desk. Old pens, paper clips, a broken calculator, tax returns from years ago, nothing unusual. Then the bookshelves, running my fingers along the spines, looking for anything that might be more than it appeared. I found it in his Bible, the old family Bible with my grandmother's name inscribed inside, leather-bound, gold-edged pages. I had looked at it 100 times and never thought to open it. But today I picked it up and noticed something. It was too heavy for just pages. I opened it, and inside I found pages that had been cut, a rectangular hollow carved into the paper. And resting in that hollow were 3 things that changed everything. A small brass key, a folded document yellowed with age, and a photograph of 3 men standing together. My father on the left, a man I did not recognize on the right, and in the middle, wearing a smile that made my blood run cold, a younger version of the man I now knew was Gerald Hoffman. I turned the photograph over. On the back, written in my grandfather's handwriting, was a date and 4 words. They think he is dead. They think he is dead. I stared at my grandfather's handwriting on the back of the photograph until the words stopped making sense. 3 men in the picture. My father on the left, younger, hair still dark, wearing the confident smile of someone who believed he would never get caught. Gerald Hoffman in the middle, thinner than I had imagined, with sharp eyes and a nervous posture even then. And on the right, a man I did not recognize. Tall, distinguished, the kind of face that belonged in a boardroom or a country club, a face that looked like money and power and secrets. Who was the third man? And why did my grandfather believe he was dead when clearly he had been alive when this photograph was taken? I unfolded the yellow document that had been hidden alongside the photograph. Legal paper, old typewriting, a deed. But not for my house. This deed was for a property at 4718 Blackwood Lane. The owner was listed as Ashford Holdings, LLC. The date of transfer was 15 years ago. Ashford. The name meant nothing to me, but it meant something to someone. My grandfather had hidden this deed inside a hollowed-out Bible for a reason. He had kept it secret for 15 years. And now I was holding it in my hands, trying to understand what it meant. The brass key was small and old-fashioned, no markings, no label. It could open anything. A safe deposit box, a lockbox, a door I had not yet found. My grandfather had left me breadcrumbs. He had trusted me to follow them. But he had not left me a map. I needed more information. I needed context. And the only person who might have that context was the man in the middle of the photograph. Gerald Hoffman, the disgraced notary, my father's former business partner, the man whose commission number had appeared on a forged deed before someone corrected it. He was the thread that connected everything, and I was going to pull it. The drive to Ridgewood took 40 minutes. Suburban sprawl gave way to older neighborhoods, houses built in the 70s and maintained with varying degrees of care, strip malls with empty storefronts, gas stations with prices that suggested the economy had not quite reached this part of town, the kind of place people end up when their plans do not quite work out, the kind of place where a man who lost his notary commission and declared bankruptcy might try to disappear. Gerald's house was a small ranch with faded blue siding. The lawn needed mowing. A pickup truck sat in the driveway with rust around the wheel wells. Not the house of a successful man, the house of someone who had been left behind. But there were signs that Gerald was not just living here, he was hiding here. A security camera hung over the front door, new, expensive. It did not match the rest of the house. Another camera pointed at the driveway, covering anyone who approached from the street. The blinds on every window were closed. No light visible from inside despite it being mid-afternoon. Gerald was watching. He was waiting. He had been expecting someone to come looking for him, and he wanted to see them first. I parked across the street and watched for 10 minutes. No movement inside, no lights turning on or off. But the truck was here. He was home. He was just deciding whether to answer. I got out of my car and walked across the street with deliberate calm. I had faced my parents in court. I had faced a notary's lies. I had faced threats delivered at midnight and messages from unknown numbers. A nervous man in a rundown house was not going to break me, but I kept my phone in my hand anyway, just in case. I knocked 3 times, firm but not aggressive. The knock of someone who expected an answer. Silence inside. Then footsteps, slow, hesitant. A shadow passed the peephole. The door opened partially, chain still on.
Hello.
Just like my door had been the morning Deputy Romero showed up. A man's face appeared in the gap, mid-60s, gray stubble, bloodshot eyes. He looked like he had not slept in days, or weeks. You are Tessa. Not a question. He knew my face. He had seen it before. On the ID he helped create, yes. And you are Gerald. His eyes darted past me, scanning the street. Looking for someone else, looking for danger. You should not be here. You texted me. You mentioned yourself by name. I was warning you. Warning me about what? He did not answer immediately. Just kept scanning the street like he expected someone to step out of the shadows at any moment. They are watching. They always watch. Who is watching, Gerald? Your parents. Their lawyer. People you have not met yet. People I have not met. The words hung in the air between us. I had assumed this was about my parents. About a forged deed and an attempted eviction. But Gerald was suggesting something bigger, something I had not seen yet. You think Mark and Diane did this alone? His laugh was bitter, hollow. You think they are smart enough? Open the door, Gerald. Tell me what you know. If I let you in, they will know. If you do not let me in, I will go to the police with your name and let them ask instead. Long pause. His eyes met mine. Tired, scared, calculating. Then something shifted in his expression. Something that looked almost like recognition. You are just like your grandfather. He was the only one who ever stood up to them too. The chain slid off. The door opened. You better come in. The interior of Gerald's house was dim, curtains drawn. The smell of stale coffee and cigarette smoke hung in the air like it had been accumulating for years. Papers were stacked on every surface. Newspapers, printouts, legal documents. The home of a man who had been building a case, or a defense. Maybe both. Gerald did not offer me a seat. I took one anyway. He lowered himself into a chair across from me and lit a cigarette with shaking hands. I did not want to help them. His voice was flat, resigned. But your father does not ask. He tells. I pulled out the photograph from my grandfather's Bible, set it on the table between us. Gerald stared at it like he was looking at a ghost. Tell me about this picture. He picked it up with trembling fingers, turned it over, saw my grandfather's handwriting on the back. His face went pale. Where did you find this? My grandfather hid it. Along with a deed and a key, he wanted me to find them. Gerald set the photograph down carefully. Like it might explode. We started that printing business together. Your father and me, 1992. I did the work, he did the schmoozing. When it started making real money, he pushed me out, bought my share for pennies, told me I would never prove it. He was right, I could not. So when he came to me last year, I thought maybe I could finally get even. What did he want? Documents, good documents. A lease that looked real, a deed that would pass inspection, and an ID with my face and a different license number. Gerald nodded slowly. His cigarette trembled between his fingers. Where did you get my photograph? Your mother had it, from some family event. A funeral, I think. She said you would not notice it was gone. A funeral. My grandfather's funeral. They had taken my photograph at my grandfather's funeral, to use against me later. That was who they were. That was who they had always been. I made the documents. Gerald's voice was barely above a whisper. All of them. The lease, the deed, the ID. I thought it was just family business, rich people moving money around. I did not know they were stealing your house. You knew enough to warn me. He looked away. I knew enough to be scared of what happens next. What happens next, Gerald? What are you afraid of? He stubbed out his cigarette. Immediately lit another. Your parents are not the only ones involved. My stomach tightened. Pike knew. The lawyer. He knew the documents were forged. He helped plan it. Your father met with him 3 times before the eviction was filed. I was there for 2 of those meetings. Pike did not just represent them, he coached them. Told them how to structure it so it looked legitimate. Pike. The smooth attorney with the expensive suit and the practiced calm. The man who had stood in that courtroom and argued that substitute service was perfectly legal. He had known the whole time. There is more, Gerald continued. There is a clerk at the recorder's office. She got paid to not look too closely at the deed. And there is someone at the sheriff's department who made sure the eviction got fast-tracked. A network, a conspiracy. My parents had not just committed a crime. They had built a system to make it work. So the judge was right to be suspicious. It was not just my parents and a nervous notary. It was organized, small, but organized, and expensive. Your parents spent a lot of money making sure you would lose that house. Why? It is just a house. Gerald laughed again. That bitter, hollow sound. It is not about the house, sweetheart. It is about what is in the house. I went still. I do not know what it is, Gerald said. But your father said it once. He said Henry hid something in that house, and Tessa is sitting on it without knowing. Henry. My grandfather. He had hidden something, and my parents had been willing to commit multiple felonies to find it. I stood up, walked to the window, parted the curtain just slightly to look at the street. My car was still there. No other vehicles, no one watching that I could see. You have evidence. I said it without turning around. You kept records. Gerald was quiet for a moment. Then I heard him stand. Heard him walk to a closet. Heard him open a door. I am not stupid. I knew they would throw me under the bus if things went wrong. So I kept copies. Of everything. I turned around. He was holding a cardboard box, setting it on the table between us. Original files for the fake lease, draft versions of the deed, email printouts, communications with Pike. He reached into the box and pulled out a thumb drive. And recordings. My heart stopped. Recordings of what? Of your father explaining exactly what he wanted, and Pike explaining how to make it happen. I stared at the thumb drive like it was made of gold. Why are you showing me this? Gerald's eyes met mine. Because I want immunity. I want to hand this to the DA and walk away. But I need someone to vouch for me. Someone they will believe. You want me to help you. I want us to help each other. You give me cover. I give you the evidence that puts them all away. He was a criminal. He had forged the documents that almost cost me everything. But he was also the only person who could prove the full scope of what my parents had done. Sometimes justice means working with people you do not trust, to catch people who are worse. Okay, I said it before I could talk myself out of it. I will talk to the DA with you, but I need one more thing first. What? The envelope, the one with my grandfather's gravestone photo. Who put it in my house? Gerald's face went pale. That was not us. Then who? I do not know, but... He stopped, his eyes fixed on the window behind me. Get down! He grabbed my arm, pulled me below the windowsill. What? There is a car outside. It was not there before. My heart pounded. I risked a look. Black sedan, tinted windows, parked 3 houses down. Engine running. They know you are here. Gerald's voice was barely a whisper. They have been watching me. Now they know I am talking. Who, Gerald? Who is in that car? I told you, there are people you have not met yet. The sedan's door opened. A figure stepped out. Too far to see clearly. But they were walking toward the house. Gerald. We need to leave, now. There is a back door. He grabbed the box of evidence. Whatever you do, do not let them get this. Because if they do, your parents walk free. And you lose a lot more than a house. Gerald grabbed the cardboard box and moved toward the back of the house with a speed that surprised me. For a man in his 60s with shaking hands and bloodshot eyes, he knew how to run. He had been practicing this escape in his mind for years, waiting for the day he would have to use it. And now that day had arrived. The back door led to a small concrete patio. Weeds pushed through the cracks. A chain-link fence separated his yard from the property behind. The figure from the sedan was already at the front door. I could hear the doorbell ringing, then knocking, heavy, deliberate. Not the knock of someone asking a question. The knock of someone who already knew the answer. Don't look back, Gerald whispered. If they see you through the window, they'll know we're running. They'll call ahead. Call ahead to who? Just move. I went over the fence first, landed hard on the other side. My knee protested but held. Gerald passed the box over, then climbed. Slower, clumsier. He was not built for running anymore, but fear gave him speed he did not know he had. The alley behind his house was narrow. Trash cans, weeds, broken concrete. Gerald pointed left. My truck is parked on the next street. I always keep it there. In case of what? In case of exactly this. We moved through a gap in another fence, across a backyard with a rusted swing set, through a hedge that scratched my arms and caught my hair. Gerald knew this path by heart. He had practiced it. Every turn, every shortcut, every hiding spot, waiting for the moment when someone would come for him and he would need to disappear. I risked a look back. Between houses I could see Gerald's front door. It was open now, a figure standing inside, not entering, just standing, watching the house like they owned it. Like they owned everything my parents touched. The figure was too still, too patient. Whoever was at that door was not worried about us escaping. They were waiting, like they knew where we would end up anyway. Gerald's truck was parked on a residential street 1 block over, different from where I had left my car. He unlocked it and threw the box in the back seat. Get in. Keep your head down. My car is still on the other street. Leave it. They already have your plates. Your car is marked. We take mine, or we don't go at all. I hesitated 1 second, then got in. My car could be replaced. The evidence in that box could not. Gerald drove like a man who had been waiting to flee. Not fast, careful, checking mirrors every few seconds. Fast draws attention, he said. Careful gets you out. We made it 2 blocks before I saw it. In the side mirror, the black sedan. Same car from Gerald's street. 3 cars back. They're following us. Gerald's hands tightened on the wheel. I know. You've done this before. Not exactly this. But running? Yeah, I've been running from your father for 20 years. This is just the first time he sent someone with a car. Gerald did not head for the highway. Instead, he turned into an older neighborhood. Narrower streets, more turns. He was using the roads like a maze. Every turn put distance between us and the sedan. Left turn, right turn, through an alley barely wide enough for the truck, past a school with an empty parking lot, under a bridge, around a curve. The sedan tried to follow, but Gerald knew these streets. This was his neighborhood before my father pushed him out. The one place he had memorized every escape route. I watched the mirror. After the 4th turn, the sedan did not reappear. We lost them? For now. But they know what my truck looks like. And they know where you live. Gerald's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. We have maybe 2 hours before they regroup. Whatever you need to find it fast. He pulled into a parking lot behind a closed gas station, out of sight from the street. Both of us breathing hard. The adrenaline was starting to fade, leaving something colder in its place. I opened my phone. No new messages from the unknown number. No calls from my parents. Silence. The kind that means they are planning instead of panicking. Gerald pulled the cardboard box onto his lap, opened it, checked the contents. It's all here. The files, the emails, the thumb drive. Enough to put Pike in prison. Enough to prove your parents planned everything. He looked at me. But not enough to protect you from whoever was in that sedan. Who are they, Gerald? I don't know names. Your father called them fixers. People who make problems disappear. What kind of problems? Documents, witnesses. He paused. People. Are you saying they might try to hurt me? Gerald did not answer immediately. I'm saying your grandfather was afraid of them too. My grandfather? Why do you think he hid whatever he hid? He knew what your parents were capable of. He knew they'd come for it eventually. And he wanted to make sure they couldn't find it without you. We sat in silence for a moment, processing, planning, trying to understand what we were dealing with. We have 2 options, I said. We go to the police now, hand over everything, the files, the emails, Gerald's recordings, let them arrest my parents, Pike, everyone. Gerald shook his head. And then what? The fixers disappear. The evidence ties to us. Your parents hire new lawyers, claim they were victims of a scheme. Pike flips and blames me for everything. Or we find what my grandfather hid first. Whatever it is, my parents want it badly enough to commit multiple felonies. That means it's valuable, or dangerous, or both. Gerald's reasoning was simple. If we find it before they do, we control the narrative. We know what we're protecting, what we're threatening them with. Right now, we're just running. We need leverage. And your grandfather wanted you to have it. I sat in that truck, smelling cigarette smoke and old vinyl. Thinking about my grandfather, he had trusted me with the house. Maybe he had trusted me with more than that. Maybe he had been waiting for me to look. Okay. We go to the house first. But we go now. Before they figure out where we are. Gerald parked 2 streets away from my house. We walked the rest. The box stayed in the truck, hidden under a tarp. Carrying a box of evidence makes you a target, he said. Walking empty-handed makes you invisible. The house looked the same. Same windows, same door, same porch where Deputy Romero had stood 2 days ago. But it looked different now. I was not coming home. I was coming to search, to find whatever my grandfather had left behind, and hope it was worth everything I had been through to keep it. Gerald stopped at the edge of the property, stared at the house. I helped your father try to steal this place, and now I'm helping you protect it. Strange how things turn around. I did not respond. Forgiveness was not on the table, but cooperation was. And right now that had to be enough. Inside, I checked every room. Empty, undisturbed. No envelopes on the counter this time. No signs of intrusion. Maybe they were watching Gerald. Maybe they had not found this place yet. Or maybe they were waiting for us to find what they could not. I pulled out the photograph I had found in my grandfather's Bible. Set it on the kitchen table alongside the deed and the key. Gerald stared at the photograph. His face went pale. Then paler. Where did you find this? Hidden in my grandfather's Bible, along with the deed and the key. He picked up the photograph with trembling fingers, looked at the three men. My father, himself, and the third man. Do you know who that is? I pointed to the man on the right. Gerald's voice came out strangled. Victor Ashford. Who is Victor Ashford? Your father's first partner. Before me, before the printing business. They had something else, something bigger. He set the photograph down like it was burning his fingers. Victor was the brains. Your father was the face. Pike was the legal muscle. Together they ran a real estate development company, back in the 90s, before everything went corporate. What kind of development? The kind that makes money by not asking questions. They'd buy distressed properties, foreclosures, estates in probate, then flip them fast, before anyone could challenge the titles. Sometimes the titles were clean, sometimes they weren't. What happened? Victor wanted out. Around 2008, 2009, the economy crashed, the deals got dirtier. He said he was going to talk, going to make things right. Gerald paused, lit a cigarette with shaking hands, then he died. Car accident on the highway, single vehicle, no witnesses. Case closed in a week. I looked at the photograph, at Victor Ashford's face, confident, alive. Then I turned it over, looked at my grandfather's handwriting, the date, 13 years ago. This photograph is dated 13 years ago. Yes. You said Victor died 15 years ago. Gerald nodded slowly, his face gray. That's what everyone said. That's what the obituary said. That's what your parents told anyone who asked. He pointed at the photograph. But this picture was taken 2 years after his funeral. I stared at him, the implication settling into my bones like ice. If Victor was alive 2 years after his funeral, then he didn't die in that car accident. Which means the accident was staged. Which means Gerald finished for me. Which means your father and Pike helped a man disappear. Or they made him disappear. And the only question is whether Victor was in on it, or if he's buried somewhere no one's ever going to find. I looked at the deed. 4718 Blackwood Lane, Ashford Holdings, LLC. This property, Blackwood Lane, what is it? Gerald's eyes widened. That's the property that was supposed to be Victor's retirement. He bought it years before. Land outside the city, 20 acres, a farmhouse, a barn. He used to talk about it. Said he'd move there when he was done with the business. After he died, your father claimed it went to the company. But this deed shows it transferred to Ashford Holdings, Victor's own company, right before he was supposed to die. So Victor transferred his property to his own company, right before he supposedly died in a car accident. Either he was planning to disappear, or someone wanted to make sure the property stayed hidden. My grandfather had this deed, which means he knew about the property, which means he knew Victor didn't die in that accident. Gerald nodded. Your grandfather was their accountant back then, before he retired. He saw all the paperwork, and he kept the pieces that didn't add up, waiting for someone to put them together. I looked at the brass key. Small, old-fashioned, no markings. What does this key open? Gerald stared at it for a long moment. Victor had a safe, in the barn at Blackwood Lane. He showed me once, years ago. Said it was where he kept his insurance. Everything, every deal, every payment, every handshake that went wrong. He said if anything ever happened to him, the safe would tell the whole story. After he died, your father tore that barn apart looking for it. Never found anything. Unless my grandfather got there first. Unless he took what was in the safe before anyone could destroy it, and kept it hidden for 15 years. I looked at the key. If this opens that safe, and the safe is still at Blackwood Lane, then whatever's inside could prove everything. The staged death, the fraud, the cover-up. Gerald nodded. All of it. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, new message. You're getting closer, but you're not there yet. The barn isn't empty anymore. And Victor says hello. I showed Gerald the message. His face went white. Victor says hello. He's alive, I said. Victor Ashford is still alive. And he knows we're looking for him. Gerald's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his cigarette. If Victor's alive, then this isn't just about your house. This is about a 15-year cover-up, and everyone involved has a reason to make sure you never find the truth. I looked at the key in my hand, at the photograph on the table, at the deed to a property that might hold all the answers. Then we need to get to Blackwood Lane, before they do. Gerald shook his head. If Victor's there, We're walking into a trap.
Hello, what
If Victor's there, he's the trap.
What's
And
that
I'm done
about?
being afraid of people who think they can control my life. I pocketed the key. Call Detective Reyes. Tell her where we're going. If we're not back in 2 hours, she sends backup. And if Victor tries to stop us,
Okay.
then Victor becomes evidence too. Blackwood Lane was 45 minutes outside the city. 45 minutes of back roads and farmland and the kind of silence that makes you think about everything you might be driving toward. Gerald sat in the passenger seat of his truck, chain-smoking with the window cracked, watching the rearview mirror like he expected the black sedan to appear at any moment. I drove because his hands had not stopped shaking since we left my house. And because I needed something to focus on besides the photograph in my pocket and the key that might unlock 15 years of secrets, Victor Ashford. The name kept circling in my mind, my father's first partner. The brains behind a real estate operation that made money by not asking questions. A man who supposedly died in a car accident 15 years ago, but appeared in a photograph dated 2 years after his funeral. A man who might be waiting for us at the end of this road. Tell me more about Victor, I said. Everything you know. Gerald lit another cigarette. His fourth since we left. Victor was smart. Smarter than your father ever was. He understood how to move money, how to hide transactions, how to make problems disappear on paper. Your father had the charm. Pike had the legal cover. But Victor was the one who made it all work. What kind of deals were they doing? Real estate fraud, mostly. They would identify properties in distress, foreclosures, estates where the heirs were fighting or didn't know what they had. Sometimes they would buy the properties legitimately, but sometimes they would forge documents, create fake liens, manufacture title disputes that forced owners to sell cheap. Gerald blew smoke toward the cracked window. When the market crashed in 2008, things got worse. The deals got dirtier. Victor started talking about getting out, about going to the authorities and making things right. And then he died. Gerald nodded. Single car accident. Supposedly lost control on a highway outside the city. No witnesses. The car burned. The body was too damaged for an open casket. You went to the funeral. I went to the funeral. Your parents were there. Pike was there. Everyone cried. Everyone gave speeches. And the whole time something felt wrong. Victor was too careful a driver. Too paranoid about everything. The idea that he just lost control? You didn't believe it. I didn't have proof. And I was in no position to ask questions. Your father had already pushed me out of the printing business. I was broke, desperate. I needed to stay on his good side just to survive. Gerald's voice dropped, so I kept my mouth shut. And I watched your father get richer while Victor's memory got buried alongside whoever was really in that coffin. The road narrowed as we moved further from the city. Houses became fewer, fields stretched out on either side. The kind of landscape where you could hide almost anything. What happened to Victor's assets after he died? Most of them went to the company, Ashford Holdings. But the company was controlled by your father and Pike, so everything Victor built ended up in their pockets, including Blackwood Lane. But your grandfather's deed shows the property transferred to Ashford Holdings before Victor died, which means either Victor moved it himself as part of a plan to disappear, or someone forged the transfer to make sure the property stayed hidden. I thought about that. My grandfather had kept the deed for 15 years. He had seen something wrong and documented it. But he had not gone to the police. He had not exposed anyone. He had just hidden the evidence and waited. Why didn't my grandfather do something? He had proof that Victor might be alive. Why just hide it? Gerald was quiet for a long moment. Because Mark is his son. Your grandfather loved your father, even knowing what he was capable of. He couldn't turn in his own child. But he couldn't destroy the evidence either. So he hid it. Kept it safe. Maybe hoping someday your father would change. Maybe hoping someone else would find it and do what he couldn't. Someone like me. You're the one he trusted with the house. You're the one who would fight back. He knew that. He planned for it. The GPS told me to turn right onto an unmarked road. Gravel crunched under the tires. Trees closed in on both sides, blocking the late afternoon sun. We're close, I said. Gerald checked the mirror again. Still no sedan. But that didn't mean anything. We should have called Detective Reyes before we left. I did. Left a voicemail explaining where we were going and why. If we're not back in 2 hours, she'll send someone. And if Victor's there waiting for us, then we find out what he wants. And we get answers. The property appeared around a bend in the road. 20 acres of overgrown land. A farmhouse that had seen better decades. Paint peeling, windows dark. The kind of place that looks abandoned until you notice the fresh tire tracks in the mud. And a barn. Weathered red wood, rusted hinges. Big enough to hide almost anything. "Someone's been here recently," Gerald said, pointing at the tracks. I parked the truck near the farmhouse, killed the engine. The silence was immediate and complete. No birds, no wind, just the settling of the truck's engine and the sound of my own heartbeat. We got out carefully. Gerald had grabbed a flashlight from his glove compartment. I had my phone ready to record. Evidence, documentation, the only things that mattered when you were dealing with liars. The farmhouse first or the barn? Gerald looked at both buildings. His face was gray with fear, but he was still moving forward. Still choosing to be here. Victor's safe was in the barn. If the key fits, that's where we need to be. We walked toward the barn. The grass was tall enough to brush our knees. Insects scattered as we moved through it. The barn doors were closed but not locked. Gerald pulled one open with a screech of rusted metal. Inside, the air was thick with dust and old hay. Shafts of light came through gaps in the roof, illuminating floating particles. Farm equipment that hadn't been used in years, stalls that had once held animals. And in the back corner, partially hidden by a canvas tarp, something that didn't belong. A floor safe, industrial grade. The kind that couldn't be moved without serious equipment. Gerald pointed. "That's it. That's Victor's safe." I approached slowly. The tarp was dusty, but the safe itself was clean. Someone had been here recently. Someone had checked on it. The key felt heavy in my hand as I pulled it out. Old brass. No markings. It might not even work. 15 years was a long time. Locks corrode, keys get copied, safes get emptied. I knelt beside the safe. The keyhole was small but clean, recently oiled maybe. I slid the key in. It fit perfectly. The lock turned with a click that echoed in the empty barn. I opened the safe. Inside were files. Dozens of files. Bank statements, property records, contracts with signatures I recognized and signatures I didn't. Photographs, audio cassettes, a ledger book with handwritten entries going back 20 years, and on top of everything, a single envelope, sealed, with my name written on it in my grandfather's handwriting. Tessa. He knew. My grandfather knew I would find this. He had prepared for it. He had left me a message. My hands trembled as I picked up the envelope, opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Tessa. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And you found what I spent 15 years protecting. Everything in this safe proves what your father and his partners did. The fraud, the forgeries, the staged death of Victor Ashford, and the real death of the man whose body they used. Victor is not dead. He disappeared willingly, with your father's help, in exchange for his silence about their crimes. They paid him to vanish. They gave him a new identity. And they buried someone else in his grave. I couldn't stop them. I couldn't turn in my own son. But I couldn't let the truth disappear either. So I took everything from Victor's safe before they could destroy it. I've been holding it ever since, waiting for the right moment. That moment is now. You are the only person I trust to do what I couldn't. Use this evidence to protect yourself. Expose the truth. And don't let them win. I love you. I always have. Grandpa Henry. I stood there holding my grandfather's letter, tears streaming down my face. He had known. He had watched his own son become a criminal and felt powerless to stop it. But he had not been completely powerless. He had saved the evidence. He had left it for me to find. Tessa. Gerald's voice was sharp, urgent. We need to go. Now. I looked up. He was at the barn door looking toward the road. There's a car coming. Black sedan. My heart stopped. I grabbed the envelope, shoved files into my bag. As many as I could carry. The thumb drive. The recordings. Is there anything digital in there? Gerald helped me search. Found a small hard drive at the bottom of the safe. Unmarked but clearly important. I grabbed it, closed the safe, left it unlocked because there was no time. Back door? Gerald pointed to a gap in the barn's back wall, wide enough to squeeze through. We ran. Outside, the tall grass swallowed us. We moved low, fast, heading for a tree line at the edge of the property. Behind us, I heard car doors closing. Voices. At least 2 people, maybe more. We made it to the trees just as flashlight beams swept across the barn entrance. They know we were here, Gerald whispered. Then we need to keep moving. We pushed through the trees, branches scratching, roots threatening to trip us. The truck was on the other side of the farmhouse, too far, too exposed. My phone buzzed, unknown number. Against every instinct I answered, Ms. Ward. A male voice, calm, cultured, familiar in a way I couldn't place. My name is Victor Ashford. I believe you have something of mine. My blood froze. I'd like it back, and I'd like to have a conversation, in person, at your house, in 1 hour. What makes you think I'll agree to that? Because if you don't, my associates will find you in those woods and have a much less pleasant conversation. I have people at every exit. You're not leaving Blackwood Lane without my permission. What do you want? I want the evidence you just took from my safe. I want the key your grandfather stole, and I want to make you an offer. What kind of offer? The kind that lets everyone walk away. Your parents go back to their lives. You keep your house. I disappear again. Everyone wins. And if I say no? Then my associates search your property. And when they're done, there won't be a property left to keep. I looked at Gerald. His face was white with terror. 1 hour, Victor said. Your house. Come alone or don't come at all. And Ms. Ward, don't bother calling the police. By the time they arrive, this will all be over, one way or another. The line went dead. Gerald grabbed my arm. We can't go back there. It's a trap. Everything's a trap. But I have evidence now. Real evidence. And Victor doesn't know I already sent Detective Reyes a voicemail. I started moving toward the road. Gerald followed reluctantly. If we go to my house, we control the environment. We know the exits. We know the hiding places. And if Victor's people get there first, then we improvise. But I'm done running. My grandfather spent 15 years hiding from this moment. I'm going to walk straight into it, because the only way through was forward. And Victor Ashford had just made himself part of the evidence. The drive back to my house took 37 minutes. 37 minutes of watching the rearview mirror and running scenarios in my head. Victor Ashford had given me 1 hour. I had used half of it getting off his property and back onto the main road. Now I was racing toward a confrontation I had not chosen but could not avoid. Gerald sat beside me, clutching the bag of evidence like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to reality. His hands had stopped shaking. They had gone past shaking into something worse, a stillness that came from accepting that everything was about to change. You can't go out there alone, he said. If Victor's people are already at your house, then I need you to do something for me. I kept my voice steady. The evidence, the files, the hard drive. I photographed the most important documents while we were driving. I've already emailed them to myself and to Detective Reyes. Gerald looked at me. When? At every red light. Every stop sign. I've been sending files since we left Blackwood Lane. His eyes widened slightly. You're building insurance. I'm building a record. If something happens to me tonight, the evidence survives. The truth gets out. My parents don't win. I pulled into my neighborhood. The streets looked normal. Quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before a storm. But as I turned onto my block, I saw it. The black sedan, parked in my driveway, headlights on, engine running. They're already here, Gerald whispered. I know. I parked at the curb, killed the engine. Sat for a moment, looking at the house where I had grown up visiting my grandfather. The house he had left me. The house my parents had tried to steal. The house that apparently held secrets worth killing for. Call Detective Reyes again. Tell her Victor Ashford is alive and at my address. Tell her to come now. Gerald pulled out his phone. His hands were steady now. Purpose had replaced panic. What are you going to do? I'm going to buy us time. I got out of the truck and walked toward my house. Toward the sedan. Toward whatever was waiting for me on the other side of this moment. The front door of the sedan opened as I approached. A man stepped out. Mid-60s, silver hair, expensive coat that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He looked like money that had learned to hide. The kind of wealth that does not want attention because attention asks questions. His face matched the photograph from my grandfather's Bible. Older now, thinner, but unmistakable. I was looking at a ghost. A man my family had buried 15 years ago. A man who had been watching ever since. Tessa Ward. His voice was cultured, controlled. The voice of someone who had spent years practicing how to sound reasonable while doing unreasonable things. You look like your grandfather. Same stubborn jaw. Same eyes that don't flinch. He was the only person your father was ever afraid of. I'm beginning to understand why. You're supposed to be dead. Victor smiled. Cold. Practiced. the smile of someone who had heard that statement before and enjoyed the reaction it provoked. Death is a matter of paperwork. Your father taught me that. Among other things. 2 other figures stood near a second car, the one that must have been blocking my back alley. They did not approach, just watched. Fixers. The kind of people who get paid to solve problems. And I was the problem now. Let's make this simple, Victor said. You have something that belongs to me. A key, a deed, a photograph. Things your grandfather stole from my safe 15 years ago. I want them back. Your safe? My safe. My evidence. My insurance policy. Your grandfather took it before I could disappear properly. He's been holding it over your father ever since. A lovely, quiet arrangement. Until he died and left everything to you. My mind raced. My grandfather had not just hidden the evidence. He had used it. He had kept my father in line with it for 15 years. For 15 years, Henry and I had an understanding.